Thokozani bukhosini. I'm Gogo Lerato. I'm Gogo Kandalembube, and I am late. A whole 14 minutes late. I've had a few texts from you guys saying, "Are you going up today? What's happening?" So it's my thing, right? So, and things happen. I was very busy. So today we're going to do an introduction into prophetic spirits. My child is in the back making a lot of noise. I have so much to tell you guys. As you guys can see, I'm just dressed in white today. So, all right, because we are talking about prophetic spirits, I think it's good that we should sing, or I'm going to sing, and my voice is croaking because I'm very tired, but I'm going to sing my song when I try to get into the zone. Okay. Atamelang hoje ofa liminele hallelujah nazohle murorise murate mu sebeletse Jesu Kriste matla otle wena khanya lefatse wena re bulelang ditsela ra o mema wena khanye kgolo ya lehodimo re kokota ka ro lehodimo re kopa matla morena modimo ra o mema wena ntate wa lehodimo ra o mema wena mme wa lewatle ra le mema lona manyelo ya halelang go tlotsene tsa lefatse morena modimo re le dinkutsa o di tla utlwa lentswe la hao habe wena morena modimo ya tla bua ka sebele be wena tla re gantsetsa ditsela ke isa thoriso le khanya le lerato le tlotlo ho wena morena modimo ka lebitso la le matla Jesu Kriste amen. So I'm done, right? Okay. Gogo mesh. Okay. I hope to do that today. Let me just check my screen because it's a bit, mushy. Just give me a minute, please. Okay. Looks slightly better. So, prophetic spirits. Woo, there's a lot to be said about prophetic spirits. I will start my talk with the analogy that I always give, that we are individuations of God. We are God broken up into different components. So the foundation of prophetic spirits is already established whenever we believe in a God, period. Whenever as human beings we say that there's a deity, there is a supreme being, we are prompted, that on its own prompts us, that pushes us to believe in a being that requires us to devote a part of ourselves towards it. So for the fact that man believes in a supreme being, a source, now that is the foundation of Seporofeto, or that is the foundation of belief systems in general. So from that place, now we start to see the human being, the body of the source, go back to itself, the body using its mouth, using its hands, using its praise, its worship, go back to itself and start to say, self, you are higher, you are almighty, you are omnipotent, you are glorious, right? Every time we have gone to church, every time we have prayed to a God, every time we have prayed to anything outside of us, actually what we are doing is celebrating the individuation of God. So actually we are praying to ourselves. Ooh. if we truly believe that we are individuations of God and that the spirit of the one true God that is within us aims to experience itself on earth, then we will definitely believe that when we speak of God, you can say God is the self. You can say that God is Badimo. So that is the foundation of a prophetic gift. I was actually thinking about it earlier on as I was busy. And if you think about the laws of evolution, we say that everything started in the sea, right? Even historically, I mean, I know we've actually spoken about, all the continents being together at some point, and the pressure, and the seasonal changes and the evolution of this world, and the tides have sort of drifted the continents apart. So we would actually agree from that point of view that at some point human beings were all living on one vast land, call it that, right? But even more, we can agree, if you look at Darwinism, if you look at the stories of evolution, is that everything basically began in the sea. So also, the sea now becomes our heaven. The sea now becomes our original place. The place where we would have evolved through the years, the ages, to becoming human beings. I mean, we know there's been Homo sapien, whatnot. We have had evolution as species, and this is not about us as people, right? Through the ages, and this evolution now brings us to becoming human beings as we see them today. So actually, the law of Darwinism basically says we all began from a cell. Some actually have even argued, we are our foundation. We are coming from a rock. I know. And I will go back to the rock story and why Jesus Christ uses that parable at a later stage. So Darwinism says that it was one cell that, differentiated itself yet again. And eventually, some species started to move out of the sea, onto land, so forth. So, sorry, I'm being disturbed by a comment here, but okay, I don't get what it says, but okay. But anyway, so if you look at that, the differentiations of humankind, that tells us that our foundation, our God, even our heaven, we can even say our heaven, as living species on earth, if you look at it from the eye of science, was the sea. That's where all living organisms basically originate, right? So I've tried to ask myself, why is it then, considering that we are all from the sea, why would some of us have ancestral gifts? Why would some of us have, prophetic gifts? And why would what would determine the difference? Because, I mean, after all, we are sea, from the sea. I've heard a lot of people, some people are mermaids, some people are, water snakes, water serpents. And I've always wondered, why is that? And as I was cooking now, that's actually why I was late. As I was cooking now, I don't know if it is my thinking or divine knowledge. I was pointed towards something that I'd read a few years ago about Hinduism. That Hinduism, we know, believes in many gods, but their definition of, call it a supreme being, this supreme being every life force at every level simultaneously of itself. So the supreme being, when I read a few years ago, was Brahma. Brahman. Yes, they believe in Krishna as well, who's also said to be a supreme being, a cornerstone. Yes, they believe in Shiva as well, who's also a cornerstone. So if I'm correct, the Hindi believe that they have three fundamental supreme gods who were the creators. They've got many other gods. Many other gods. But again, I read somewhere, and this was some years back, geez, I can't remember, I don't know how I remember this today. But what they said was, Brahman has got many avatars. So avatars would be reflections, would be faces. He itself, Brahma itself, has different reflections of its own divinity. It means that in Hinduism, even divinity, even godliness has got different aspects, different facets, different expressions, which is very interesting because most of us, I don't know about you guys, but Lord, exactly how old is he? This is a common question that we ask our parents, but I think in African tradition and culture, we don't have explanations of a supreme being that would have different aspects of itself, being supreme itself, right? So, today when I was thinking about it, I remembered that actually Brahma is the energy, the pure energy that creates all in all, right? Which also, by the way, will still differentiate itself according to its own divinity, which is so interesting, right? Because in African, especially also in Christian religion, we don't believe in a God that could have someone else above him. I'm just saying. Or could have parents, We don't believe in a God, mudimu o naleng badimo, right? So this was where I started to think to myself, it must be, now as I was cooking, that through the process of evolution, some of us, and this would also be speaking to reincarnation, but it would be making true the Hindi definition of Brahma being living at every life level. Some of us, we evolved at a slower rate than others. So I'm guessing when some species decided, hey, it's time to get out of the water, there's some dry land over there, maybe because of what their diet required, or they actually just enjoyed to sit near the sun, and they decided to go out onto the dry land. Maybe some of us decided to adapt to the sea life and enjoy it for some time, right? Until obviously, through the changes of the billions of years, maybe really decided, okay, fine. So that would actually, in my mind, it would make sense why some people, LED mermaids, why some people, LED water serpents, why some people, there's many creatures still under the sea. It would make sense why our different gifts, are the way that they are. I heard a story some years back. Not a story. It was on a spiritual group, and there was a guy who could communicate with mermaids. I thought that was very interesting. It was the first time I had ever imagined that I could have mermaid spirits. But what this guy said was that there are also many levels of water spirits. Some are good, some are bad. So what he was actually saying was that in the water world, very much so like the earth, things, people, the energies there are different. They are also unique, So just like Nalibalui Molefat saying, I suppose there should be some there. Which I think it will bring us something very important, and maybe this one I'm going to touch on it much later, maybe next weekend. So it kind of made sense to me why we would be different. However, it also told me that Seporofeto is a universal belief system. Not even a belief system. Seporofeto is universal. Seporofeto is the foundation, right? Because water travels amongst itself, around itself, to itself, for itself. Water does not have a manual. It moves as it wishes. So that is where we would be coming from. But it also tells me that Seporofeto speaks a lot about reincarnation. And I think that's why a lot of prophetic people, their gifts are moving into more universal lessons, more horoscopes, more reading the stars, the moon, the planets. We are moving in that space because these are natural wonders that have always been there, and these would be natural wonders that would, even from a place where we were still in the sea, affect us, right? The tide, if you really think about it, and we were living in the sea at that time, the moon tide and how the moon moves would still affect us. It would probably affect us a lot severely, actually, if we were living there, right? So this actually says that there is a definition of a reincarnation. There is a definition, we are defining our reincarnation. We are also defining universal elements. We are defining our being outside of the body, right? I will say something that I learned also. For now, we are bringing Seporofeto towards the African healing context. Why Seporofeto? Why are sabidingaka abangoma, all of us? And this was also something that I don't know if I was told or if it was something that I found out on, or it was divine wisdom. But what happened was most of our ancient spirits who were healers, who came before the time of Jesus Christ, are typically what we would call spirits of people babanaling ubungoma, right? These are probably spirits that did not know religion. They did not know, what we know in the world today. So these guys must have been at least more than 2,000 years old. And when they come to their twasa, they come in the nature or with the understanding that they had. They come with the language, with the culture that they lived, because they were not taught, they were not, call it, colonized even. All right. Now, we seem to think, or just because somebody has ubungoma spirits, that they don't have prophetic spirits. So if you really think about it, or rather for me, that's how it worked out. I began to twasa an ancestral spirit that was very old. But what she decided to do was now look to my msamo, look to a closer generation, right, and attach herself with that closer generation person. And that's how she managed to sort of evolve into Seporofeto. Seporofeto actually ke le dlozi la gale le ne le sa tsebe Jesu, le be lifta letla le kapana le mundao o le kopana le sedimo sa gago se se leng recent. And by recent I mean 3 generations upwards. So if it was a great grandmother, if it was a grandmother, if it was your deceased mother, even deceased mother would be it's unlikely, but it does happen. If it was your great grandmother or your grandmother, chances are both of them have lived within the last 100 years, right? Both of them have lived within the last 100 or 200 years. And if you look at, let's say, religion, we would say it's over 2,000 years old, right? So what they do is that, simple, it's a bit complicated what I'm trying to say. I want to formulate it in my mind properly. What they do is they attach themselves to a recent dlozi that you have. And the recent dlozi that you have, normally, iba yena o berekang singuni, or iba yena mguni mprofeta mtswana wa gago. And that ancient dlozi, what it does is then they begin to take on the role of endowed spirit, which normally orchestrates things and sits kumrago. However, when that ancient spirit does not do that, when that ancient spirit decides to come into this life, right, for whatever the reason, by the way, Badimo Barona, they don't only give us their gifts for Rona. They are experiencing themselves too. When that ancient spirit decides, I would like to know what it feels like to live in 2021, right? I would like to experience that. Then it comes as it is and brings its gifts as they are to its twasa. I was shocked a couple of months back. Let me tell you guys. My husband's Lozi Utsofet and Tatole. I don't even know how old he is. He speaks many languages, right? He speaks many languages. And I remember I was at home. My husband was driving. He was driving out at night. When he drove back at night, he got out of the car and he was in a trance. I'd never seen anything like that. I really wondered how that happened. So, Mkulu comes in, still in a trance, talks his language. This Dozi is over the moon. And I asked my kids what happened. And my children just said, Dad started going into a trance on our way to town, which is 40 kilometers from my house. And I said, all the way to town and back? And they said yes. And after Mkulu did his work and everything, and my husband was back, I asked him, so how did you manage to drive? And he said to me, Babes Nyoka was actually the one driving. He was so excited. To him, he says that my car felt like flying, felt like an airplane. He'd only ever seen it. Now, the question becomes, how did my husband's Lozi ever see an airplane? This guy is very old. So it means for Lebadimo Barona, as ancient as they are aware of the events of this world. They also now, I guess, become spectators to the changes of life, to the evolution of the world. And I guess Harba Twasa, we give them the gift also to experience what they didn't experience. I thought this was beautiful. I thought it was just absolutely amazing. The old man does everything else his own way, but to him driving a car was like, whoa, it was just great. In as much as you do get people with Abangoma spirits, of people who are afraid of ancient spirits, who are afraid to drive the car. Remember now, with every spirit, you take on their personalities, right? So now you get an ancient spirit, which attaches itself to a recent spirit. That normally would be somebody who is in Jesus Christ. Or if they are not believers in Jesus Christ, they would be Hindu, they would be Buddhist, they would be whatever, right? But they would be recent. These would be people who sort of have evolved and have sort of grown into things. And I know that, we have a serious problem with colonization in the Bible. I know. But I want to put also why Seporofeto uses the Bible. By the way, the Bible is not the only book that speaks about God. When I began to twasa Seporofeto, I used books, novels. My first book that I read, that I began to learn Seporofeto and go profeta kayoni, was a book written by Deepak Chopra. It was not the Bible. So the only thing is, Bible ke taula. Like I've said before, if you see a Coca-Cola bottle, you know or that thing is sweet and inale acid lor imunate. You know that Coca-Cola le oros are not the same thing. And it is the same like a Bible. Bible ke taula. It's tshwana le marapo a re wa latlhelang. Right? Any other book that speaks about God, that speaks about any source outside of yourself, that book can become taula as well. However, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, they went to church. They believed in Jesus Christ. They knew that there's a Jesus Christ. And they felt, okay, well, Jesus, okay, whatever. Maybe I believe in him, maybe I don't. But they knew of a Jesus Christ. And, they knew to pray through a Jesus Christ even. Libito la Jesu never became a difficult name in our culture in the last 200, 300, 400 years. Yes, it was brought through slavery, right? Yes, it was brought through slavery. But it became something that we could acquaint with, right? It became a manual in which now we managed to sort of still speak to our higher self. Because although we were slaves, the belief that we need to pray to a higher self, it never stopped. However, what would happen, I guess, because now, I would say as a result of the slavery mentality, we started now to sort of push ubungoma aside. And this was purely from a systematic place, right? It was the system that forced us and our ancients to sort of push ubungoma aside for many reasons. Right? Mainly psychological reasons, but also reasons for things that we could see, or rather that they could see, or that they believed. So ubungoma became largely unpopular. It does not mean that ubungoma was not correct or that Seporofeto was correct. The story between ubungoma and Seporofeto are purely historical events, right? However, going back to the analogy I gave about the njeti cloth, umoya is thunywa, is the foundation of bongaka. The first ngaka ayathwasisiwa. The first ngaka e bontshitswe ka moya to gore tshantse itirele eng, right? So again, although ubungoma was pushed aside, the making popular of Seporofeto was actually also still in line with the original definition of I am, the original definition of who we are, being spirit. So I guess our people decided to go back there. In truth, I believe the movement between Seporofeto and Bongoma, it's going to be a movement for the rest of mankind's being, right? Because for a long time, if most of us could ask our grandmothers and our grandparents, because to them bungaka was putimona. To them, bungaka was not something that they wanted to be involved in. And now suddenly, their grandchildren are popping up everywhere. Now we've got spiritual gifts. And I believe that in as much as we are being prompted like it is now, a few generations down the line, we will have a time when our descendants will want to go into ubungoma again. I don't believe these are cycles of life, and these are two gifts, these are two aspects of living that will always interchange. Because as long as there is a human being, and as long as there is a belief in a higher power, that higher power, somebody will want to tap into it, right? And they will, even our descendants from a few years down the line, they will come back and look at what we were doing as a prophet and think, but those guys were idiots. So I think that's what I will say ka Seporofeto for now. Okay, so how do we differentiate umdao? Now we've spoken about umdao a lot, but I guess from the story that I've given about the Hindi Brahma, now you would understand why babang rena limdao wamkula. Right? When you think about the Ndawalekhoa, now we would know why we have Ndawalekhoa. And by the way, let me tell you, Ndawalekhoa, this is where Seporofeto Lekhoa comes in. Makhoa, what they did was during the medieval times, they started to practice paganism. Right? A lot of paganism was in line with, I think it was the Mayans. The Mayans have been known. They used to even make blood sacrifices of people to their god, right? But during the medieval times, in the white people, Libone, they started to practice paganism. So this was today what is called Wiccan. Lighting of candles, practicing spells, making offerings, sacrifices, casts, things like that. And I think that's where the Pikazaruna come from, because they would be having capes, which was speaking about ranks, actually, in their organizations. Witchcraft also came to a place, because paganism, it later became defined as witchcraft as the Roman churches. As the Catholic Church started to say, no, but there's a lot of activities going on here. We can't work like this, right? And also in an attempt to unify the reception of the word of Jesus Christ, certain things started to become not okay. So, their belief system back, right? And when the Roman Catholic Church said, no, we will not have pagan worship, and that's where now pagan worshipping, or the worshipping of many gods and practices, became witchcraft. And it became witchcraft, right? So that is where Seporofeto comes from. A lot of the foundation of what we are doing as Seporofeto is coming from that. That is why Seporofeto hangata mdawating kwalekhoa. These would be your Irish people, these would be your English people, these would almost be also your Vikings that actually believed in this type of thing. Today, what they call it is, it's maybe the white magic, or Baba Bita the Wiccans. And I didn't know this until I met a Wiccan priest. However, I'll tell you now, Wicca still has a lot of components tabungoma. But those people banwan twaso. And I was not aware of it. So, in as much as banwan twaso, bungak ababone, it is in honor of past life mistakes. So they take on many spirit guides that will help them to deal with everything from sleep problems to alcoholism. That is the process yabone ya go thwasa Wicca. And when they do the readings or the tshebetso, banale a certain fee price that they charge, but particularly they are paying back a karmic debt. So Makhoa are still in a way more advanced with regard to this gift yabone. They don't try to make money. Well, the few Wiccan priests that I know, the one Wiccan priest that I know told me, I needed him to just help me with something. And he said to me, no, I can't charge. In my past life, I murdered a lot of people. I was a murderer and a rapist, and they got to show me this. So in this life, I am paying back my sins of the past life. So I don't charge. However, please do bring me something that is living. Now, that is precisely why Seporofeto you need tsimo. That is precisely why Profeta regrets at tafole the fruits and vegetables. We need something living. So if you think about Wicca and you think about Seporofeto, we are very much in line, right? Libangoma as well, because they would have Istunya, which is also Moya in itself. So at the end of the day, as mankind, we agree that Moya uberekelwa intangible, and that Moya is a service that we need to give to our fellow mankind. I'm not saying don't charge for bungaka bahao. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not even saying you should do it for cheap. I'm saying that the gift in itself is like a stream, a fountain of youth. There was a time when I was told by my Gobela that my gift will run out if I don't charge or whatever. And something in me said, no, my gift will never run out. However, you do need to charge, because charger has a lot to do with your self-worth. But that's a topic for another day, because I know most people are complaining charging 2,000 rand for a reading and whatever. But I will say the reason why we would charge differently is because Moya in itself is a universal lesson, and money it is an earthly thing, but it is moving the same way that Moya does through the whole world. Money limits. They are the two things in this world. They keep on recycling themselves. So from that place, from that point of view, Mudimo Badimu abanani issue boneka chelete, because batse ore chelete ke ntho fatsing, and chelete I know go berekela if you do not invest in your purpose. And that purpose always is fostered by the Creator in you, which is God. So I've said a lot of things today. Okay. Seporofeto, again, I'm going to just add this. I want to bring this back to the Bible. Why is Seporofeto? Seporofeto ki eng? Why batho ba bantsho re tshwantse re tse Seporofeto? Why are we praying to a Jesus? I think I've said it already. Bible in itself ke taola. However, Seporofeto is only founded upon universal ascended masters. Jesus was not the first ascended master, but Jesus is the one that we know, or most of us have called on his name a lot of times, or we know a lot about him. Buddha is an ascended master. I think there's a Chinese ascended master. I've just forgotten his name. We have, I think it's seven, and probably more ascended masters so far through the ages, right? But in African tradition, I started reading up on the different Orisha, which is, call them the Ghanaian, from Ghana, Ghanaian, and Central and Top Africa belief systems. So Central Cameroon, Nigeria, those belief systems. I think the Orisha are very popular, or they were. And even African spirituality speaks of the 7 Orisha. But I have heard that actually there are not 7, right? 7 are the 7 major Orisha that we know. So the Orisha are like gods and goddesses. These are the African sons. And we've seen a lot of pages even on Facebook. Zabo goddess Yemoja, goddess Oshun. We've seen a lot of depictions of these gods and goddesses recently come up again. However, the Bible also speaks about the 7 churches. So number 7, for some reason, in spirituality as we know it, becomes very significant. You look at your 7 chakras as well. You look at what they call the 7 rays of God, which is the seven colors of the rainbow. And that each ray has got its angel. The 7 dynasties of God, the 7 names of God. The number 7 keeps on coming up. And I think that is how we were able to even understand the God of the Bible. So when the Bible came to us, it didn't come and teach us anything new. I think it just reaffirmed, and what they did was probably take a lot of our belief systems and apply them in such a way that we will be able to hear this message of Jesus Christ. And I will say, just like the Orisha, we don't have 7 chakras. We have lots, hundreds, because the chakra is an energy center. However, I would suppose these are the biggest, the largest energy points. A chakra actually, by definition, would be like combination of nerves, right? Because that is how information moves around your body. That is how you feel pain. So everywhere where nerves dikopanang, it should by definition be a chakra. And this would be under medical studies. And this is why even Africans, we are such good doctors. Bungaka, doctor, Africa. Because there are a lot of things that we got to understand in our ignorance. What we think. So, okay. So, Seporofeto, part 1. I think it's done. I gave a lot of information, I know. A lot of things that seem unrelated. But as we go, I'm going to tie things together. Just like I did Kamundao. I know for a fact, I see Kenili coloring. But what I wanted us to understand is that why are we having water spirits? And why are we having different mundaos? And how does Bunga Kabasetso differ? Seporofeto. But I think I've spoken about that a lot. Right? So Seporofeto, actually, there's no difference. Absolutely none. Because the taula tse re berekisang ka Seporofeto ke bebele. Ke dikeres. Ke taula, that thing. The moment you light a keres, you're saying let there be light. Simple. Just like your patient abutswela mo khetsing ya ditaula. O hema their own being. O hema their own light. Their own inner God. Right? So all of these things are just components of the same thing. Over and over. If we can look at our gifts, Mudimu is giving us the same narrative in different ways. Right? Mudimu, Badimu, Sidimu. Alright, now in closing, I'm going to provoke you guys. Do you guys know gore Badimu ba Seporofeto? Sometimes when they talk about ubungoma, bona le bona, bar ubungoma ke botemona. I hope we're going to break this down. Badimu babungoma. And this I experienced a lot with my husband when we were twassing. Badim babungoma. They feel gore badim ba Seporofeto. Ki badim ba kereke. I remember my gobela used to say to me, wena ranzu, na xikwembu xa wena xa kereke, na rato rialo. There is a very interesting connection between the two. Both said ya badim ba nyatsa ba bang. I can promise you. And sometimes that's why go le thata for rona ha re twasa. Ebe re sheba, let's say I saw there was a Facebook post of a lady achisa mabai. We don't understand what's happening there. Una le mundao. But mundawa ge kwa lekgowa. And mundawa ga o latela tsela ya sekgowa ya the modern prophetic gift. So when you see these people, this is hopefully an answer also for Batu, because I struggled with it too. Why is it ha re thwasa badimo ba rona ba setso e ba o ka re ra tshaba gore ko kerekeng le dikereke why ba sa batle dingaka tsa setso le rona self ra tshaba re bona o ka re re kwatisa Jesu Kriste? It's because sidimo, even the African ones that function under mndao wa sekgowa gangata, they will often refer as ubungoma. They will refer to Bungoma as Budimon. And I'm going to break it down to you why, right? But the simple answer is that even the church, even the Roman Catholic Church, even the churches, even religion, organized religion, is coming from pagan practices. So the only way that religion could be applied to people was by saying denounce and repent and believe in the one true God. However, in that belief, yeah, that ascended master being Jesus Christ, there has been life. Because the taola tsa Jesu Kriste and all the things that he did, by the way, uthwasitse Jesu, like on a serious note. The taola tsa gagwe, if you look at his journey, dilo tsa gagwe tsena di etsa bontsi e ne le setso. So with time, our ancestors started to say, okay, well, now we will go into Seporofeto. But listen, somewhere, it's a sign. We can never throw it away, because even though bone ba re badimo ba bungoma ke bo demona, they still expect us for ba eletse bojwala. But we're going to talk about this. This is what I like to call a divine dichotomy. Okay, it's like a catch-22. O wrong how we yetsa, ibilo o right how we yetsa. Right, and baruti bale, with their point of view, korbungaka kibu demona, they are not correct, but they are also correct. This thing, it's a makasi dimu samoto le the gift korumdawag kimang o reng batla ing. Lord, what is the Ndao Spirit trying to achieve? So that's that. That's that. I hope this will give a lot of clarity, especially for our prophet. So like we want them, right? Don't ask other people to talk about me. I want it. Right? We want them. However, that thing ibaka khotlang komsamo. That thing ibaka khotlang ko badimong. That is why gantsi ratsama we go koma fetong re lo thwasa obungoma. Gangata when you see your mgoma dlozi or your ancestors ba thotsi, chances are batho ba batla seporofeto. Or go na le mundao wa sekgowa somewhere, or mundao wa mkula. And now liene ha batle. But we'll speak about that as time goes on. The scale of your gifts and how your gifts go. I believe ngaka engulengu, if you're a bit yes prophet or a big portion, depending on who you are primarily, and then kunale bongoma, or rather let's say kisetsu, right? And hopefully I will discuss that next week. Kining batung. I've been talking for a long time. And yeah, so it's the way thing. I promise you, they're going to call us demons, but sometimes it's Rona, we are the ones who don't understand. And it's because we don't understand ourselves. That is why that is why le rona re batla foster na kwengwe to go ko dikerekeng tse di rileng and sedimo sa rona se batle o fitla ko kerekeng mo lo tsogelwa ke badimo wa botla like a goat, right? It's not that maybe there's something wrong with the church. It's just that lenyelwe la go a le tsamaya batho ba go maybe ba batlo bitswa manyeloi. You do get badimo ba se prophet ba ba sa batleng go bitswa manyeloi ba ba dumelang go bitswa badimo. You do get badim as a prophet, but we're going to talk about this in detail next week. All right. So, Tokozani, I've been a bit everywhere with today's talk. I should have actually put up my phone like this long ago. I've been everywhere with this talk today because I wanted a place where I can establish things. And I've got a lot of things, as you guys can see, a lot of components of this gift, yes, a prophet, that I want to talk about. And I want to keep on comparing it so that we understand why we're doing this. right? So I promise you guys, definitely next week there's going to be more structure, more everything. So Tokozani, just wonderful talking to you guys. Now I'm actually going more into my element. Now I'm going more into my element and what I'm really good at. And we're going to talk about this next week and how the gifts come. All right. Have a good evening. Okoko nabomkhulu. Satogoza. It was just lovely. Yeah. Tokozani.